Hello, New York educators. Welcome to our four-part series focusing on MTSS, a multi-tiered system of support. New York defines MTSS as a data-driven decision-making framework that is meant to increase effectiveness, efficiency, and equity of instruction to make a positive impact on the academic, behavioral, and emotional growth of every student. Now, that's a lot of factors to cover in just one sentence, but we're going to break down the essential components of the New York MTSS framework for you: screening, progress monitoring, multi-level prevention system, and database decision making. So don't miss out on this 4-episode series for ways Savvas Learning Company can help your district provide the level and the type of support necessary for your students. Enjoy!
Thanks, Raya, and welcome to our second episode of MTSS New York. I'm Gretchen Gose, your host, National Specialist with Savvas Learning Company, and I am joined with my dear friend, Kurt Whited, our National Math Specialist. Welcome, Kurt.
Thanks so much for having me.
As we saw in our last vlog, we talked about the ways that we identify student needs. And we talked about our math screener diagnostic assessment through momentum assessment. And today I really want to focus on that tiered support. That's a big piece of MTSS, is these tiers. So before we even start, what are these tiers? What does that mean?
Sure. A lot of people define things a little bit differently, but generally we kind of spread things out across 3 tiers. And the first one being a place where teachers in the natural line of teaching, they address student need. The second tier generally is referred to as a place where there's something other than just the main core curriculum that students are working on. And the third tier typically is where there's small groups and maybe it's outside of class time. Those are generally some of the parameters we think about.
Okay, so we're thinking about the tiered groups. We're thinking about these different groups of children and their needs. We've already taken that screener, so we kind of have an idea of where students are falling. What kind of support can we provide for our students in that MTSS realm?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, and you mentioned the screener, and that does have its own resources, which does fall into those different tiers of support. Okay. And the teacher can use those additional resources to fill gaps that students have, and they're assigned digitally. All right. But I think when you think about helping a teacher just in the natural flow of their teaching process, so many resources are built into the Envision series that help teachers identify and then address student learning gaps in the process of teaching. And, it really happens in the lesson itself. And in the teacher support, what you'll see is resources the teacher can use. For example, there are ways to address misconceptions in the teacher's edition, which is super helpful to, again, identify things early on. Part of that would be tied into some formative assessment that the teacher is doing. So that is identified in the teacher edition, so they can get in the process of teaching a good idea of where their students are before they do a quiz or an exit ticket or anything else that they may, to understand where students are. So, besides all those great supports that are in there at point of use for the teacher in the Envision program, there's also a great resource I think is somewhat not used as much as it could be. And what it does is it provides so many different access points for students, and that's our language support handbook. Imagine for every single lesson of the Envision program, K through 8, there are 2 to 3 additional activities that provide this equitable pathway just around language. Because sometimes part of our support is around language, it's not around the mathematics. And so I feel like this is a critical piece that needs to be used more of the Envision series to provide more students access to that content.
I love that. I think that really levels the playing field for our students. A lot of times students come in and teachers get so focused on the language that they don't realize the students may have the concept. There's just somewhat of a language barrier in there. And that kind of takes that away. So the teacher knows, what do you really know and what part is a language barrier. That's amazing. Tell me more, Kurt. What else do we have?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So that's also in the process of supporting individual lessons And as we move forward kind of through the lesson design into part 3 of our lesson design, which is assess and differentiate, the teacher can give an online quiz if they care to. And if they give that little quick check, which can be done, there can be done print or digital, but when they do that, groups are automatically created around students below different thresholds so that they can assign out different resources like reteaching or additional support. But what I really appreciate about what the authors created with the Envision series is that when a teacher may pull a small group based on a score that they got that need additional support, many times those activities involve students doing mathematics by putting their hands on manipulatives to go back and really build that understanding. And to me, that's a critical element of MTSS is really meeting students where they are. And oftentimes the use of manipulatives, putting their hands on, really helps them make an understanding of those concepts.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for the manipulatives. I think that we build that conceptual understanding by starting with that concrete and moving to the representative before we go abstract. And if you miss one of those steps, you risk having some holes in a student's foundation. So being able to have those manipulatives, whether they're right there at their fingertips or digitally, is extremely important in building that. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
What about students that need more support?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gretchen. And I think, what Envision, it does many things well, but all the different supports and differentiation that are built into the program for the teacher to easily use. For example, the math diagnosis and intervention system is I call it the little black box that could, okay? Because every assessment item in the program has an item analysis that directs you to additional support for the child, additional work that they can be doing, additional activities for the student to do, that really take the content of every single assessment item and drops it down about a grade level. And the beautiful way that system is organized, it's organized around strands of math. So if I'm looking at a page and I see my kids aren't really at this level, I can just turn back a page and it'll drop it down even more. So it provides this great tiered support for students and teachers to really, again, meet them where they're at. And that's a math diagnosis and intervention system.
So I'm hearing a lot of meeting our students where they're at and providing these tools for every tier student, for our teachers. I mean, we're really making this easy for them to reach every student where they're at. Sounds to me like the definition of differentiation and us really helping our teachers differentiate for our students so that they can get the best possible outcome provided to them. That's really amazing.
Gretchen, you mentioned that, a lot of easy things for teachers. And I think that's absolutely critical, that teachers have resources that are easy to use, because otherwise they kind of get stuffed on the back shelf and not approached. And that's sad for both the teacher and the students, so having things accessible and easy.
Yeah, if there's anything we all know and can all agree on, it's that the one thing teachers don't have enough of is time. And so if we don't make it where they can find it quickly, it's just not going to be a useful resource.
Something that we haven't really talked about was our tier 3 support, which is really so much more than that. And I think you'll probably address this at some other time, but Success Makers is great support for teachers that really truly meet students in an adaptive way, going up or down. So while we kind of label it as a tier 3, it really adjusts its content based on how students are answering. And that is a digital adaptive solution that really helps and meets a whole range of needs, kindergarten through Algebra 1.
Amazing. We have so much in place within Envision to really support our students and to support our teachers. This has been great, especially when we connect this to that MTSS and that every tiered support, it's there. Tier 1, they've got what they need. Tier 2, we can help them out. In Tier 3, we can provide that even more scaffolded support for them to attain what we're trying to present to them at a grade level.
Gretchen, can I just add one more thing? Because when we think about MTSS, it's really about all stakeholders. and that stakeholders in terms of administration all the way down to parents. And something that I'd like to mention is our family engagement place where parents can go in and support a child, actually any stakeholder, okay, a caregiver, and all the content of a lesson is in a place without logins or credentials for those parents or caregivers to help their child. So when we think about that comprehensive MTSS support, it does include anyone that may interact with that child. And I just want a big shout out for parents here, because there's a great resource for them in our family engagement. Again, no logins, no credentials for the parents.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes down to it, parents have to help their students sometimes, and Googling is not always the answer. So if we can use the same resource that they're seeing at school to help at home, that connection is even more powerful. So absolutely, I am guilty of Googling to try and help my students. So that is a resource I absolutely appreciate.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gretchen. I appreciate your time today. And I hope that this is helpful for people out there in New York.
Yes, thank you again, Kurt, for joining us on Blog 2 of New York MTSS. Until next time, stay savvy, New York.
Thank you for tuning in today. Please reach out to your Savvas account manager if you have any questions or would like to request more information about our complete solution to meet the essential components of MTSS.